No. Okay, let's move on to Eric Q. Yu. Thank you, Wes. Hope I pronounced it right.
Okay. Hello, everybody, and thank you for having me here in ATypI. And I forgot to introduce myself during my first day moderating here. I am Eric Liu. I'm Chinese typographer and based in Tokyo. So today, I would like to talk about the grid. East and West grid is the best. Everybody may know this, and I think everybody have this copy in your bookshelf. Actually, I made the simplified Chinese version in 2016, and I also have the opportunity to refine its translation and design in 2022. And today, I would like to take it as an example to talking about the CJK grid, because it is quite complex. So first, East Asia has its own grid system. Although Brockmann have written almost 200 pages in his book, there's one page he mentioned that Japanese characters like Chinese are built up on the square base. Exactly, here is the Japanese book, and here is what we call layout grid in Japanese, and you can see it is vertical. Yes. So from writing, from the childhood, we learn our characters in squares. And you know, it is not easy. And here's what we practice in squares. And then, when we learn to writing and we do the composition, we use grids. In China, we have a vertical one. And here is the Korean version, which is also a horizontal one. And in Japanese, this is a very famous manuscript from the Japanese writer Natsume Soseki. And here's this is the first page of his novel. And you can see it is in grid and it is in vertical. So actually, it is the grid for our East Asian. It is not just something designed for beauty. It is the fundamental character property. For design, yes, actually, I am also working as the invited expert of W3C. And here is our document. We're working on the requirements for Chinese text layout. We are writing it in Chinese and also in English because we want to tell non-native speakers how the Chinese text layout should be. So we have written in the section 2.3.53. The first one is line length should be multiples of the character size, and the line end should be aligned with each other. Here's the start. Here's the start point. Yeah, I love John's speak yesterday. The line length is the very important thing. Yes, when we are making the books, the line length is very important because we have squares. First, you need to draw the text frame, and we put square in. If it is not the multiple of the size of your text, what happens here? And if you click the button of justification, what happens? The type designer will not happy because the original metrics are all ruined by your setting. So this is very simple one and fundamental one. Maybe a lot of you making a page layout like this because it's in Latin. We put the value of the margin, and here is the page. But we do the workflow right opposite. we don't set the margin first. Instead, we calculate the text area first, because it must be multiple of the character size. And for columns, here first we set all the layout grid, then we put all the elements based on the characters. So we have columns, we have the gaps of the column, we also have the headings. Headings, maybe we also need the areas by the so-called vertical rhythm with the line height. All of these are based on the grid. And for the indent, Chinese have the principle set the 2-character indent. It is called 2 characters. We don't say it in pixel or in point or in millimeter or in inch. We just say 2 characters. Also for the headings, maybe it is the most complicated one, because in web design, when you're counting the line height, is something difficult to fix the bugs. But first, in East Asian, we must fix the area or the height of the heading in the multiple of the line height. First, make the area. And inside the area, for the heading, maybe you can choose the different size, you can choose the different heading, leading. But first, the area should be multiple. So everything is in grid. This is very interesting things. Maybe you can see the name list here in the newspaper. It is full of candidates of the Congress, and you can see the columns are set all in 3-character column. All of these are in the columns of 3 characters. Of course, you can say some long names will not follow the grid, but we have the layout grid underneath. So just put everything together to let you get in. I have Chinese and the Latin layout here. So we set the text area just by the opposite, and we set a little indent. We take the position of headings. We count the column, and also we set the name list all by character base. While in Latin layout, maybe you can use millimeters, inches, point, which is what we call absolute unit. Or in our East Asian, we use what we call a relative unit. You just set the body text size, and everything is linked with the body text size. Okay, the second one is most design tools are still weak for the Eastern Asian grid system. Because we are designers, we need to choose tools. I am very lucky, and thank you for the Adobe team, because they have the very good InDesign productions. And also, maybe some of you remember this Quark Express. It is still very good, and it can make East Asian grids. But how about others? I don't know. And of course, some of these may not be professional layout engine, but people use it every day to make the documents. So it may not easy for us to use the original layout system for the East Asians. It will become the user's responsibility to do the calculate. If you don't do the calculate, things will be difficult. So here is the English version of InDesign. And as I said, you put the value of the column and the margin. But we are lucky enough that we have East Asia version, and we have layout grid and margin and the columns. We have 2 modes, which when you build a new document, we have 2 options. So what happens if you have set the margins and you got a page like this, And we also have the option to have the layout grid to set the body size first, the size of the character first, and the line height first, or maybe you can call it leading first. Then we can get the layout grid underneath. So I am lucky that InDesign is a good tool that you can see we have different systems here. So what have I done for the simplified Chinese one? Here is the result. I cannot make the grid system from my own because it's Brockmann's grid. So my task is first to analyze its original one and set the Chinese one on its grid, which is very difficult because it is written several decades ago. You can see he said in Cicero, he said in Dido points. What was that? And how we can rebuild it in InDesign. I have to change the line height. I have to change the character size because Chinese have a different setting. We have our own readability. We have much more line height than Latin one. So that is what calculation. I won't explain it in details because I don't have time. But anyway, I made it. And underneath, you can see everything should be fit and everything is neat, like this. So this is what I have done with InDesign. But unfortunately, for the daily work, maybe, for example, this is the pages for macOS. I only have the option to have the spacing setting with point for before and after the paragraph, and only the indents by setting by centimeters. While you need to set the size in points. Oh, how can I do the conventions? And most of you know this. We have a lot of new tools to making the UI and UX products for on-screen typography. But you can use it, but use it carefully, especially for the East Asian ones, because if you don't calculate correctly, it happens. If you do not set the container correctly, you will need much more complex adjustment afterwards. And it happens. It really happens. This is a printed book in China, and you can see the last line of a paragraph keeps the original setting, and all the lines above are all tracking with the space. You can see? It just happens. And it seems that a lot of designers just don't know it or just don't calculate it well. And it's good for me to have InDesign because InDesign have the grid tool that I can use. But sometimes you need to choose a good tool, and sometimes you need to do it by precise calculation. So the third point here, CJK are not the same, which is also mentioned by, I think, the first day, our first speaker, Min Yong, also mentioned that. Yeah. Well, there are a lot of words. We hate the words non-Latin, okay? So we use the East Asian, and then we have the words CJK, or maybe CJKV, something like that. But CJK often means the Chinese, Japanese, and Korean, but we are not the same, unfortunately. So since I made the book, I also doing the comparisons between all the versions. So we have the simplified Chinese one, which is made by me, and we have the traditional Chinese one, Korean one, and Japanese one. Let's see what inside. This is what I made for simplified Chinese. And for Chinese, the character is in what we call square, foot width. And with our punctuation, the original setting is full width. Of course, we need a tiny adjustment during the typesetting. And we have no word space. It's important. We have no word space. So just imagine how we're doing the justifications. And then if we want to do the layout, we flush left, but we also align right, which is something the same with the justification. Because we are squares. We just put squares together, it is still a square, a rectangular shape. And this is the Taiwan version. Actually, they use the same translation of mine, just a transcript in simple, traditional Chinese version. And Taiwan designer made another version, which he follows the original form of Brockmann. Because if you read the English and the German version, you can say it is flush left and ragged right. And it doesn't have indent. Personally, I don't think it is it is a good choice because it is difficult to find the end of the paragraph where it is. But I understand his choice because the original book has this format. It is their choice for this translated work. And this is the Japanese one. It is designed and supervised by Mr. Shirai, who is also the designer I very expect. And he also make the very precise calculation. And it's interesting that we do the calculation differently, and the result are almost the same. But Japanese is difficult and complex because the Japanese writing system have the kanji, the character one, and also have the kana. We have hiragana, katakana, which may be proportional. Or a lot of the Japanese designers have the metrics for the alternate proportional. And for the punctuation, in Japanese, basically it should be full width, but they still have the option. And no word space, neither, just as the Chinese. And for the alignment, of course, if you do it the editorial design of a Japanese, it should be so-called justified, but a lot of Japanese designers have the option to have the other designs. So here comes the Korean one, and it's quite different. I cannot read Hangul's, but first, the character. Yes, as explained by Mingyong on the first day, it should be, originally it is a square, but sometimes, right now, a lot of Hangul are almost made by the narrow rectangular. So what I could say, it is monospace. It is monospace, but maybe it is not square. And the punctuation, it is the proportional one. And Hangul has the word space. Ooh. The word space in Hangul is the orthographically required. And if you don't put the space correctly, it is just like the wrong spelling. So it is important for Hangul to place, if you write Hangul, you must place the space correctly. And so for the alignment, maybe the traditional designer maybe they prefer to do the justification, but since you have proportional one, you have the word space, you can just follow with the Latin layout, and it is just a ragged right. So put everything together, we have characters, punctuations, word space, and alignment, and you can see the C, J, K are so different. They are different, so when we're doing the typography and doing the typesetting, it will be quite different design decisions. Yeah? of course, you can see the Korean one is the most flexible one. Maybe they can use the text layout engine with Latin very quickly. But maybe in the Chinese one, we still would like to keep as neat as the CJK, so-called East Asian grid, as much as possible. And Japanese is in between. They have options. They have a complexity. The Japanese designers are happy because they have options. They can have many expressions, but it is difficult. I have to say it is difficult and complicated. So here is my takeaway. So East Asian has its own grid system, and most design tools are still weak on East Asian grid system, and CJK are not the same. Actually, current project is on writing articles on Chinese typography. So here's the article in publishing on the Chinese design magazine. Unfortunately, it is in Chinese. But I have the small one here. I think all the initial essential one is already in here. So if you have interest, you can just Google Chinese typography. I think you can find this. So that comes to the end of my speech. Thank you very much.
Okay, so I think we have time for some questions. Anyone?
This is fascinating, since I remember getting that Brockmann's book back in the 80s and studying it. But the calculations he needed to use his grid are actually quite complex, because he would try to have the top of the type and the bottom of the type aligning within those grids. So it's not just lettering based. Whereas it seems like in Chinese particularly, it would be easier to use a grid like that, because it's all, you'd have to calculate it based on the Chinese characters.
Yeah.
One other thing, although our software always makes us define the margins first, I think the other way around. I think what is the text block, and then I have to calculate what margins give that to me. So I guess maybe I'm thinking East Asian style.
Yes. But what I mean, thank you for your comments. And what I mean for that is we have different mindsets for the layout. And that makes the different, totally opposite workflow for that. So it may be difficult, and maybe you need to consult with a native. I think this is the most important one, yeah. Because the readability must be judged by the person who can read it.
Aha, I'm working again.
Thank you for your great talk.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask you if, when we made the grids in InDesign, we assumed that grids would be most useful for book design and magazine design. Do you think that there's a strong need to add grids to the rest of the Adobe design products, such as Illustrator or Express, where you have much more dynamic situations, and is what you were talking about for Chinese and Japanese typography still applicable, do you think, for those other media?
Yes, I also consider this because we are writing the requirements of a Chinese text layout. When we write, it is a requirement, and the applications and all the manufacturers will ask if we should do this or do that. And for your question, the basic point, I think, is we need to have the grid for the paragraphs. If you just have only one heading, the heading for the one line, maybe the graphic designers will prefer to doing the character spacing manually, and they can do very creative things. But if you have to support the paragraph layout, I think it will be good to have the grid to help people to fit making the grid easier. And for Chinese, at least, it will improve the readability a lot.
So hi Eric, that's one great talk. So as part of the InDesign team, so I'd like to hear more suggestions from you, like how can we improve our grid systems for even CJK, so that, like for example, you told us that you do a lot of calculations while doing these things. So how can we improve our grid system and make it more automatic so that it suits your needs? Right, so that would be great, and I'll take it back to my team so that it might help you and others as well.
Thank you. First, my calculation that I show for you is quite a special one because I have to follow Brockmann's original grid and to have the new Chinese grid on it. So it is a special case. And for the applications, as I said, I am very thank you for Adobe team because you already provide us the grid tool. So we don't need to calculate by ourselves. We have a grid tool and we can drag. We can have the grid, but it is InDesign only. Of course, InDesign is the layout professional application. So maybe if Illustrator can have it, there will be more user be happy. I don't know. So that is the point. Right now, talking about the grid, we are satisfied with the function of InDesign, but the others are not so correctly. That's the point I want to point out. Yes.
Okay. I have Illustrator expert here as well.
So maybe we can talk later. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll definitely take your request to Adobe Illustrator team. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, unfortunately, we don't have any more time for more questions, but please do find Eric if you want to.
And I'm
learn
around,
more.
so you can talk to me.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, and may I ask Tao Di and Ryota Doi to the stage, please?